Hey everyone, welcome back to the Waste World Podcast. I'm your host, Gage Edwards, and today we're diving into a hot topic. I think I use that phrase every time we discuss batteries on this show because the dangers that lithium-ion batteries pose and how hot those incidents can get. But it continues to be a huge challenge in the waste and recycling industry, so we're going to keep talking about them. They're becoming increasingly common in everything from smartphones, power tools, e-bikes, electric vehicles. In the conversation I have today with my guest, we talk about how potentially there might be a lot of lithium-ion batteries in the room behind me as I'm flanked by all this nerdy stuff. So many safety concerns through waste streams. At the same time, many consumers don't know what to do with their batteries or where to put them when they don't need them anymore. And that leads to confusion, that leads to contamination, increased fire risks, of course. So today we're exploring why that confusion exists, what successful battery collection programs look like, and how emerging policies like EPR are helping shape the future of battery recycling recovery. So if you like the episode, make sure you share it with a friend. Make sure you subscribe to the Waste World Podcast on Spotify, Apple iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Visit waste360.com for more information on this episode and more episodes just like this one. And leave us a review. Let us know how you think the show's going. Hopefully it's going well. Okay, no more dilly-daddling. Enjoy the episode. All right, Todd Ellis is here with me from the Battery Network with the Waste World Podcast. Todd, you are the VP Service and Solutions for the Battery Network. Well, how are you doing? Thank you for being here.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate your time and appreciate everyone's focus on batteries.
Yes, everyone. I'm sure our listeners who the podcasts have been booming, by the way, thanks to the Waste Leadership Summit. So that's been great. I'm sure the listeners out there are maybe tired of hearing about batteries, but we're going to keep talking about it on this show until the problem's kind of alleviated a little bit, right? We're going to keep attacking that. So that's why I wanted to have yourself here from the Battery Network on to kind of tell us about what's going on. So for our listeners, I'd like you to start by kind of giving us a rundown of the organization, the role you play, and how that's helping manage battery collection and recycling.
Sure. Well, again, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. The Battery Network's a 30-plus-year-old nonprofit organization that was started to basically do two things. One was to help manufacturers comply with all of the state legislation that was being passed and enacted into law around battery EPR and battery stewardship in the late 90s. And basically, the second thing that we do is help build a collection network. We have a collection network nationwide to help take back used batteries from consumers. And some of those locations include retail, businesses, institutions, municipalities, transfer stations, and HHW facilities.
Great. Excellent. Now, like I mentioned, I just got back from the Waste Leadership Summit. There was a panel on batteries, fire safety. Those two seem to go hand in hand. Big conversation around that event and other events I've been to this year have been all about batteries. So we are hearing about lithium-ion batteries constantly in this industry. And I'm sure you're hearing about it just as much as anybody else being at the Battery Network. How did batteries go from being like a niche concern to one of the industry's biggest safety and operational challenges?
I think there's a number of factors that are involved. I think the biggest one is just the electrification of all things in society. Mm-hmm. 10, 15 years ago, there were certainly lots and lots of batteries in the world, but it fails in comparison to the breadth of products that now are powered by batteries. So it's not only just the number of products, it's also the type. So it's which, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, we weren't sure that we needed string trimmers or leaf blowers or lawn mowers that were going to be all battery powered, e-bikes, for instance. So it's not only just the number of batteries, but it's also the type of battery. So those batteries that are powering those items require a lot of energy. So they're much bigger and more powerful batteries that are out there. So I think part of it is just the sheer number of batteries that are out there. And I think the other part is from a consumer perspective, and which is something that we work on a daily basis with our partners on, is frankly, what do I do with a used battery, right? So inherently, I think we all know of, hey, I heard somewhere that, hey, I shouldn't throw this battery away, but what do I do with it? So some people put it in a junk drawer, some people put it in their shelf in their garage, and then some people are like, hey, you know what? The recycling guys are the experts. I'm going to put it in a recycling bin, right? And then that is the trickle down effect of it goes in a Packer truck, right? And then it goes to a MRF, and it just leads to opportunity where, those batteries weren't intended to go to at the end of their useful life, and it just causes problems from there.
Yeah, I think that's where it starts too. A lot of people are just like, I don't know what to do with it. Somebody else must know what to do with it. I'll hand it off and it won't be my problem anymore.
Right. It's overzealous recycling, right?
Hmm.
Like they want to recycle. Again, they know like, hey, I shouldn't throw this away, but I don't know what to do with it. It's sort of like years ago, and I will admit, I used to put my plastic yogurt cups in my recycling bin because I'm just like,
Todd.
they'll figure. I know. That's a lot for me to just come out and say publicly, but now it's a public admission.
It's a therapeutic session we're having here.
Little therapy.
Yeah.
But certainly I put them in there and just like, yeah, they're gonna figure it out, right? Now, clearly that's yogurt cups versus batteries. The dangers are much worse with batteries. But I think people are struggling with those same things, right? Where, hey, if I have curbside recycling and I'm not going to a drop-off facility on a weekly basis to bring my trash and recycling, I might not know where I can drop things off. So I think that's part of it, is just that awareness factor, and that sort of like, hey, I want to do the right thing, but I'm not quite sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm a pretty tuned in tech guy. I feel like I'm surrounded by electronics. I don't know how many batteries I have in my house right now that are or aren't being used at this moment. I think I would be scared to count through how many batteries I have in here that pose a threat. But maybe I'll have to do that one day just to be like, you know what, I should be mindful of
I
this.
think it would surprise you. I
Yeah.
think it would surprise you. It goes from, as you know, TV remotes to headphones
Hmm.
to laptops to e-bikes to string trimmers. It's a whole, it's a whole new world. The electrification, literally, of everything that we're touching, is amazing, and it gives us a lot of benefits. But there's also a social responsibility for us collectively, not only to help dispose of those or recycle those materials in a compliant and safe manner, but we need to, think of our neighbors, right? So these are our communities, these facilities are in our communities, these trucks are in our communities. It's people and property that are also in danger here. So it's vital that we help and understand, where these batteries can go and can be responsibly handled and recycled.
Yeah, when we're talking about the consumer again, we just kind of talked about how sometimes they just don't know and they just kind of throw things away. And they've, I guess maybe people my age and older have been taught, just, recycle as much as possible. And they do assume that batteries belong in the recycling bin rather than understanding where they're completely supposed to go. How do we get to the consumer? What do we need to do a better job of?
I think, it's a tough piece because there are so many messages out there that are aimed at consumers, right? And just you're battling a lot of other initiatives, programs, campaigns that are out there, and just sales of products, frankly. We're flooded with, our brains from a consumer perspective are flooded with all these different types of things. I think it's multifaceted. I think, there's a lot of momentum now that's out there in the marketplace. Everyone, to your point, over the last couple of years, I, go to a lot of conferences. And when I started this job in 2009, batteries weren't ever really on the agenda. But now it's multiple workshops that are on every single agenda. So there's definitely the attention to it. I think it just is going to continue to take time. Ultimately, what we want to drive to the consumer is, hey, I have a battery. this requires special handling.
Mhm.
And then once we have that awareness, then it's all right, now what do I do with it? And so that second piece of saying, hey, now that I have it, I know I can't put it in my recycling or trash. Where do I go with it? And we have a drop off locator on our website where you can type your zip code in and it will tell you all the different locations in your area where you can drop those batteries off as you go throughout your kind of daily life.
Mm, mm. Now, don't feel like you have to name anybody, but when we look at successful battery collection programs versus ones that are ineffective, what's the difference? What stands out between the two?
I think it starts all successful battery, collection programs, and I think success is defined in both amount of batteries that are being diverted and the safety record.
Mhm.
And that all starts with, frankly, with the consumer and with consumer education. Again, one, I can't put it in the trash. Two, I know I got to take it someplace. So communities that have multi-prong approach for consumers to be able to return batteries. So it's not only, hey, these are the retailers that are out there, from a big box store perspective that are taking these batteries back, but also at, any municipal facility. So whether it's a recycling center, transfer station, Department of Public Works, anywhere where you can collect batteries and being able to provide folks, I think, with that option. So I think it all starts really with consumer awareness and then that multi-prong approach locally to have a bunch of different things, right? In any aspect of life, the easier we make it for everybody, the more they're going to do the right thing. I mean, years ago, I started in the recycling industry, and we did some special event recycling and sort of testing, like, hey, if we put a trash can here and a recycling bin 25 feet away from it, what did it look like versus one, with them right next to each other, and 25 feet's a long way. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I can
That
only
trash can
imagine.
filled up pretty quick.
um, when you find that you're out, I mean, I visit electronic stores here and there, and I guess that you might as well.
Yes.
Um, when you do something like that and you see that they have a battery return program that's maybe not the battery network or something they do in house, do you ever look at that signage and just kind of like critique it a little bit? Go, oh, they're not going to understand this, or oh, they're not doing this the right way. Do you see that often, or are people kind of getting it now?
I think people are getting it now, so part of this is just the collective network of all of us within
Mhm.
the waste industry, and not just the battery industry or the battery recycling industry, but this is just the waste industry as a whole. I think we certainly have, the messaging is out there. And I think there are a lot of great programs out there to take batteries out of the waste stream. And I think, frankly, and that's part of the other consumer awareness piece is, you do have to have a multifaceted approach to consumer education, because what is going to resonate with me may not resonate with you, and vice
Mhm.
versa, right? So there is that side of it as well. And I think it's a collective awareness that we need to hit folks from a number of different angles. And one of those angles will ultimately stick. And we have to, and that will hopefully lead to, more and more people being aware and more people having, battery or having access to battery recycling, and then actually taking part in that.
Well, let's kind of look at, we've talked at length about consumer stuff, but when we talk at municipalities
Sure.
and the ones that are trying to address safety and collection, what are some practical steps they can take today without completely overhauling their programs to kind of get on board?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think one of the pieces I would say is, a lot of facilities have been collecting batteries for years,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of and I've learned a lot of things from people that have been out in the field that have been collecting programs for years. But I think or batteries for years, excuse me. I think one of the pieces too is, now there's so many different packaging options and so many like new learnings that we have. I think the first thing is just to be open to different ideas. And just because one thing has been done one way for a certain number of years, there may be a better mousetrap. So be open to change and be open to different ideas. I think at the municipal level, and the other piece is really deciding what your program is going to be. And what I mean by that is there's all different levels of batteries and that you're going to see from a municipal program. So I'm going to put your car batteries kind of to the side because that those programs have been in place for decades and
Hmm.
that's been super successful. Moving sort of staying in that smaller battery space. You have single-use batteries, which are your typical AA, AAA, Cs, Ds, all of those. Then you have your rechargeable batteries, like power tool batteries, for instance. And those are considered in the battery space portable batteries. And then you get into this or medium format space, which is batteries that are a little more powerful. And from that power, it puts them into a different shipping category. So it changes the complexities there. So I think, getting into the idea of like, hey, these are all the batteries that we're going to take back from our residents, understanding the different complexities with what those is involved in collecting and then shipping those. And we work with thousands of communities across the country, to help them identify and figure out like, hey, what makes the most sense for us as a community and how we can collect this, what we're doing now versus what we would need to be doing. So I think part of it is just being kind of open to the conversation and saying, hey, what's everybody else doing now, and maybe we're best in class, right? Which would be fantastic. Or maybe like, hey, maybe we could tweak this, and if we tweak this, maybe we could take more batteries and keep more batteries out of the waste stream and locally keep people and property safer.
Right. Now, you mentioned complexities in there, which makes me want to bring up something you mentioned earlier, EPR, which I'm sure everyone is navigating, how we are
Yes.
this the whole way. Um, that is also another major topic of the industry. And I guess from your opinion, how do you see EPR influencing battery collection and recycling efforts over the next few years?
Yeah, it's a huge impact, and it's I oversee it at the Battery Network. I oversee our stewardship service program, which deals with the battery EPR
Mhm.
laws, writing the plans, developing the programs, and implementing those programs at the state level. So we are busy, as you would suspect. As a nonprofit organization, we don't lobby. The trade industry, the trade groups for the industry, do the lobbying. So we don't lobby. We provide information on our program and what we're doing in particular states and have been doing. And we look at it, we just implemented two programs at the beginning of this year, Vermont, Illinois. And those are all battery programs. So it's single use batteries, rechargeable batteries, medium format batteries. And that was a change for us because those were the first states that had medium format batteries, those over 300 watt hour batteries like e-bike or some outdoor power equipment. Those are the first laws that had those batteries included as covered batteries. And we have two plans, for one for Connecticut, one for Washington State, due on July 1st. Today, we just handed in our amendment to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for their amended law. And then once we hand in these two in July, we're starting to write two more that are due for Nebraska and Wisconsin in January. So we're certainly busy from that perspective. What it's going to do from a collection network perspective, I mean, we're going to see it's going, each state takes a little while, right? Because just because we turn the faucet on day one doesn't mean everyone knows that they can, the types of batteries they can recycle, nor they might not have batteries to recycle there. But from day one, we, work to set up the infrastructure. Our work in with a state that's passed battery EPR starts as soon as the law is written.
Mhm.
Excuse me, soon as the law is signed, or the bill is signed into law, excuse me. And we're working with those state regulators to understand their law, what their expectations are. We're reviewing our existing collection network. What's the delta between where we are today, where we need to be? How do we get there? How do we maximize collections? How do we, to your earlier comment, how do we educate residents there? Because, for instance, residents in Vermont, the messaging there is going to be different than the messaging in Illinois and for Connecticut and versus Washington State. So there's a lot of uniqueness to this program, and there's a lot that goes into the program outside of just collecting batteries. Part of these EPR laws, which make them unique, is yes, we need to set up a robust collection network, get as many batteries out of the waste stream as we can, but we also have to provide public outreach and education.
Mm.
So, it's our job to not only build the network, but to make sure we drive people to that network.
Now, feel free to shame any states that need more education than others. I'm all ears on who I can make fun of.
Well, I will say this: we are lucky in the states that we work with that have battery EPR. The state regulators are partners, so they are fantastic to work with and really help drive and grow the programs in their state. So I'm super thankful for the connections and the partnerships we have with the states that have battery EPR for sure.
Mm. Okay, I won't let you make fun of them on recording. Let's move on. Waste and recycling operators, they're listening to this show. They better be. What should they be doing now to prepare for the growing battery volumes and potential EPR requirements?
Yeah, I think so. One is training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as an operator, I started back many moons ago in the late 90s working with operators, and really it's always has been and will continue to be regardless of the material. I go back to like the CRT days, so of e-waste and dealing with that. So it's not that different, right? It's all about training. So, what do I do when I get a battery? How do I say quickly, right? Because every operator's got 1,000 things to do, right? How do I quickly say, what do I do with this battery, right? And we try to, we provide training as part of our program. Operators need to be trained to participate in our program. We help say, hey, these are sort of the quick shots that you need to take a look at. And then as you go further, you need to, do X, Y, and Z. But I think the first run is, hey, I have a battery. Is it bloated? Is it swollen? Is it hot to the touch? Is it charred? Does it smell weird? Then at that point, it's got to go somewhere else, right? It's got to go. You want it outside the building. We have damaged effective battery containers that folks can purchase and put it in there, isolate that out. If it's just a regular battery, right? You can go into their end of life battery collections. But I think the first part, really from a facility operator perspective, which then trickles down to, the staff itself, is just train, have your emergency protocols in place. What happens if there's a thermal runaway? What do you do? And it's, call 911 clearly, but also if you get a battery that you think is compromised, what do you do with it at that point?
Gotcha. Good lesson learned for everybody. And then make sure you pay attention to the safety coverage we have in Waste 360 for that, because we do cover when fires happen at facilities, and that can be a whole other challenge.
The whole other challenge, yes.
Yeah. If we're having this conversation in 3 to 5 years, and I know this industry moves quickly, so don't feel like you need to have a perfect answer. What would success look like when it comes to battery collection, recycling, consumer awareness?
I think success is very high consumer awareness across the country. Mm-hmm. Again, it all starts with us as consumers being able to stop and say, hey, I have a battery. And to your earlier point, right? Like, how many batteries do you have in your house? Like, hey, I have a battery. I need to do something special with this battery. It can't be like my old yogurt containers of like, I'm going to put it in the recycling bin. They'll figure it out. They're the experts. Right. So it really starts with that consumer piece of very high awareness. And in regulated states, we do measure that. We do some surveys, and our job really is to help drive that awareness up and up every year. So I think high consumer awareness is there. And then I think a success of that high consumer awareness is 1, pounds being diverted from the waste stream, and 2, lower accidents over time, lower incidences. Those are the 3 drivers, I think, that from a management overall sort of spectrum of the industry, that if we could have high consumer awareness, increasing volumes of batteries being recycled and the number of incidences lowering, then I think we're in a good spot.
I think my homework for this will be to be aware of how many batteries I have in this room alone. There might be 25 in this room.
I was going to say, just looking around, I'm going to get...
There might be a good bit. Todd, that is the end of my questions. Anything I didn't cover today that you want to throw at me?
Well, I first again appreciate the opportunity
Of
to be
course.
here. This was not only fun, but I think it's a great opportunity to talk batteries. I think that, the biggest piece for us again is, help work with your residents, your customers, create awareness. There's resources out there on our website, which is batterynetwork.org. There's resources on your website. There's so many resources out there. Please take advantage of those to help communicate and drive that message to your consumers, and then also train your operators. There's a number of different battery packaging options that are out there. I'll shameless plug. We have a really cool one, which we call One Drum, which takes all the guessing out of like what type of battery this is, and do I need to bag it or tape the terminals. Basically builds a battery parfait with fire suppressant in a steel drum, and it ships under a US DOT special permit. So it's safe as it sits there because it's in fire suppressant, and in a metal drum, and it ships under that special permit. So it's safe. So I think those are the big pieces: that consumer awareness, that training, and just, continued drive to help get batteries out of the waste stream in a safe and compliant manner.
Awesome. Don, well, my next question, I guess my final thing was, where can people find out more information? But you gave the website there. So you're ahead of the script. Well, Todd, thank you for joining me. Thank you for
Thank
running
you.
down the battery network here. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, that is today's episode. That is my conversation with Todd Ellis of the Battery Network. Thank you again to Todd for joining me. As we heard, as battery usage continues to grow, it's clear the industry will need a combination of education, infrastructure, policy, and collaboration to safely manage these materials. Todd shared valuable perspective on why consumers remain confused about battery disposal, what effective collection programs look like, and how EPR and other initiatives can help create a more sustainable system moving forward. So a big thank you again to Todd for joining me today. Thank you for listening to the Waste World podcast. Again, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, visit waste360.com for more podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend. Let them know, hey, those guys are talking about some pretty good stuff over there. Maybe we should listen to it. Let someone know. There's more insights, conversations, intriguing looks at the waste and recycling industry coming soon, and I hope to share some cool podcasts with you shortly, hopefully next week. As you're listening to this, things have to be put together and edited. So we'll see you next time, and remember, it's our world, don't waste it.